I think you're the first person in like a few weeks that has done this podcast that didn't want to drink. Right before we started doing it. Thank you. Yep. Yeah. It's just like fully read.
Very lame.
Like, no. It is 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
That is.
That's like the time people start, though, that we know. I mean, people start at 5, right? Isn't that the whole saying? It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
5 o'clock. I think that's like all right, 5 o'clock. I guess. Well,
After
the whole like
happy hour.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like now that I don't go into an office. Like before we would leave the office, we'd try to get out of there like 5:15 or 5:30 and we'd go drink because I'm not going home. But like,
see, that makes sense to me. But I always waitressed or bartended. And after our shift, people would go drink. And I'm like, we were just at a bar all night. Why at 2 a.m. are you going to find a place to drink until 4 a.m.? It's insane.
Don't get me wrong. I love those industry bars where it's like, oh, this is the bar all the waiters and waitresses come to. That's the best one you want to go to.
Probably because everyone's been drinking throughout their shift. There's all the drama already bubbling up. It's going to be something.
They all know each other.
Yeah.
There's like free alcohol flowing around. If you could get like brought in by one of the other bartenders, then like that's a good time. Like the bar that we run our show at now, we've been there long enough that they're like, oh yeah, we'll give you guys a discount. Yeah, you guys want a free shot? You want this? It's like,
nice.
Why aren't I going there at the end of the night?
Yeah,
because it's like we're kind of quote unquote like industry at this point.
Yeah,
like. The bartenders and waiters all respect what we do. It's not the same, but like we all have to deal with the same shitty people.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. And then at least, you're still drinking on a tab that's way less than if you just go to a random bar. Yeah. They know you.
Right.
You know, when I started comedy, there was a club. It had been the Boston, and it was the Village, the Comedy Village, right around from the Cellar.
Sure.
And there was a bar underneath called the Bag It In. And everyone would go down there like throughout the night and after the night. But it was all Irish run, and everyone would get into fights there, and they would lock the doors so that the fight could end, so like that people couldn't run away and spill outside. It was the craziest place.
So they were keeping other people in, or the people fighting?
They wanted the people fighting to be in, but everyone got locked in. So like people would get dragged in, like people would be leaving with blood, and you'd be like, "Whose blood? No, not my blood!" Like it was the craziest scene because it would go until 4 a.m. and like everybody from probably, I bet, there's like a big restaurant, a nice Italian restaurant right by there, Il Molino. I bet the Il Molino people went there too. And then they saw the comedy people. It was probably like brawls.
Yeah, oof. That's, does that part of New York still exist? I feel like if someone were to ask me, like someone visiting, like, all right, I want to see some real like New York shit, like 6 a.m, people are like fighting in the street. I'm like, there's maybe a couple bars, but the odds of something weird happening are still kind of low.
Yeah, like that one nightly. That was going to happen. That's not a nightly thing. But you're right. You'd have to find like an Irish-run, Irish-owned, like
right.
Irish. Is that being? Can I even say that anymore?
Honestly, I mean, yeah.
I don't think anyone cares about Irish and Scottish stereotypes. Those are people, they want to drink and fight, and like that's fun for them.
Right. So maybe like, I don't know. I've seen more fights at the Grizzly Pear, honestly, than like
that's
any
funny.
other bar.
Yeah.
But that's like drunk audience members getting into it with like comics that have done too much cocaine.
Yeah, and exactly. And a chair gets thrown.
Right.
And then,
right.
people go. Yeah, those fights don't usually last long. People are ready to break those up pretty quickly.
Right.
But
yeah, the last one I saw that, there was a comic that got in like an argument with someone, and he went outside and found the kid's moped and then slashed his moped tires and then fought him in the street. So that was pretty fun.
Oh, that's a good one.
I liked it started with the slashing of the tires and then it turned into a fight, because that's a real reason to fight somebody.
Yeah. That's a psychopath who will wait and go slash your tires after.
He doesn't live in the city anymore. But the other one, there were two dudes in the Grizzly Pear audience. They were really drunk and they were like heckling me, but I actually like had a good comeback. I generally don't have, I normally am like
so good when you get
a little sarcastic thing and I hope they shut up, but like I actually had a good one on them. So he got all mad and then he left after my set. And I was like, all right, well, they were too drunk anyway. This is only going to get worse. Like, I don't care. The bar's not mad that these people walked out. But then I'm sitting outside at the Pear and I see them at Off the Wagon next door. And and they are getting in a fight with the bartender not the bartender, the bouncer that's there because he won't let them in because they're too drunk.
Yeah.
And so it's these two like meathead Guido dudes arguing with the bouncer. All the other bouncers come over from all the other places because they're like
huge.
They're all
down there.
huge.
Yeah, they're enormous.
This is not some like kid who's like just like, oh, I hope nothing happens. These are like dudes that are ready to fight every single night. And so it's these two meatheads talking to like 4 bouncers, and they're all like looking like they're gonna fight each other. And I can't hear what's being said, but one of the dudes turns to his buddy and knocks him out cold.
His buddy?
He knocked out his own friend. And his friend was laying like half dead on the sidewalk. And all these bouncers looked at each other like, what just fucking happened?
That guy's so drunk. He thought that was a bouncer? Is that what you think happened?
I don't know. My guess is like his friend said something and he was like just sick of everything.
He's like, well, I'm not going to beat up these bouncers that weigh 300 pounds. I'll just beat up my friend.
Yeah, but also like...
I think he probably got confused. Same thing at this job that I worked at. There was like a bar, cocktail waitress job. People would get so drunk on the job. And there was this guy, I remember someone was driving us home and he was like yelling at the guy driving us home. And the guy turned around. He's like, it's you? I thought I was in a cab. Like, people are so screwed up. They have no idea. And he was trying to pick a fight. And the guy was literally like, I'm driving you home. What are you trying to do? Yeah, these...
Oy, is there like... Because with comics, there's such a high rate of like alcoholics.
Yeah.
Not even including the ones that definitely are alcoholics, but like just the people that are like out and sober.
Yeah. That's a bigger percentage now, I think. The people who have, gone through it and they're sober now. There's so many. And I don't think... It's hard to say, like, anyone who has an addictive personality, I don't know how they go into comedy because you get paid in drinks half the time. Like, that's 90% of how it works. If you feel better on stage, you feel like you're funnier, you have stories to tell, you hobnob with people afterwards all night. I mean, it helps until it doesn't, but depending on how you handle your liquor.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, on stage, I don't think it helps, but, like, if you're going to sit at a club for 4 hours and just rotate through people walking through and you're like meeting new people and all this and I mean like this, I'm also shocked that like comics aren't ill 100% of the time just because we talk to so many people
and we like eat the mic that 90 people have had their mouths
I do
on.
Not. I put the mic down here and I fucking use my diaphragm. That is I'm not eating the mic. That is so fucking gross.
It really is. Some guy after a show one time opened up a mic. Like,
oh, dude.
Oh,
no.
It was, first of all, like, drooly.
There's, like a full rat in the mic. It's like...
just cockroaches crawling out of it. You know those lines?
Oh, my God. Yeah.
They're disgusting.
Oh, yeah. Never smell a microphone either.
I know, that's bad enough.
Like, only breathe out into the microphone. No breathing in. But, like, when you're talking to that many people... Nobody could sit there for 4 hours a night every night without a drink and meet that many people and hear the same thing. Like, oh, how were they? Oh, they were good. Okay, well, what's this person? Okay, it's like, it's so repetitive.
Or when someone comes up and is like, I have some jokes for you, and you have to sit and listen to 20 jokes. Like, a drink actually helps. There's comics, too, that are amazing. Like Dave Attell, who drank forever. And he got known for drinking because of Insomniac. I mean, he got known for his comedy, but like he would go out and get drunk after. So they would send him shots. Like he would get sent like 30 shots every show. No one can handle it. And you have a second show after that. He'd have to throw, water in his mouth and pretend that he was. Oh, and then I think he quit cold turkey, which is another thing that's unreal. And just go out to clubs and have people try to buy you drinks left and right.
Oh, yeah. That is kind of the like. You mentioned people with addictive personality. I think people with addictive personalities are sort of drawn to stand up in a way. Yeah. Because it is something you can like get addicted to.
It really
is. It's like the high on stage, but you're all like you can always work on it. It's not like if you're sitting at home by yourself, it's not like you're sitting there going like, all right, well, nothing I could do until I go to the club. It's like, no, I could sit down and write. I could do this. And like all those like prolific comics that like just have a joke for everything at all times or whatever. It's like that's a full-on addiction to comedy. They're always thinking about it. They're never not thinking about it.
They're writing stuff down constantly. That's like when you go out with comics and like you're having a funny conversation and people are like, that's a bit, write that down. That's a bit, write that down. Yeah, people's minds are constantly going. It is completely an addiction, which is also another like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's good for the people who make it, but the people who would do it for so many years that aren't, I'm like, that's a terrible addiction in a way too.
Well, so the ones that, so this is partially what I wanted to get into with like the psychology of addiction. It's so like, I don't understand the comics that like they get into this lifestyle and then they quit and they stay in the city. And they're still like, those are the ones that stay addicted to alcohol. Yeah. And like they don't change their lifestyle really. They just change where they like, instead of going to a comedy club, they just go to another bar. But they're staying in the same lifestyle of like, all right, I work during the day and then I go get fucked up at night and then I'm hungover in the morning and then it's like this endless cycle. But like one of the big factors to addiction is your environment, and if you're able to change your environment, cutting out the addiction is much easier. Like Dave Attell cutting cold turkey while still living in New York and still going to the comedy clubs is crazy willpower.
Yeah,
that's insane. But like you see people quit comedy and then they move out to the suburbs and they're like a completely different person. It's like, well, yeah, they're not going to all the bars and meeting all the people.
Yeah, they're like in nature all of a sudden. They're out with deer in their backyard. It's a lot easier to not have a drink than when you're with a homeless person harassing you. It makes a difference. But the thing too, though, we were talking earlier. You studied the psychology of addiction, or did you study specifically that facet?
So my overall degree was applied psychology. So for like 2.5 years, I kind of focused on clinical. And so I took like, I was probably 3 or 4 classes on like drug psychology and addiction psychology. And like one of my like professors / like guidance people or whatever is she's like a national expert on addiction. So like courts would call her and say like, hey, we have this person in here and they have like, they're arguing addiction or like alcohol did this. Can you come in and be an expert witness for these behaviors based on like the different drugs and their addiction and stuff like that? So that was one of my teachers, and that was kind of what I focused on for a while.
That's interesting because I've heard like addiction's such a weird thing to me because I've never really struggled with it, but I have plenty of family members and friends who have.
Sure.
But everything is considered an addiction now. When it's chemical, I understand it a lot more. If you're smoking or you're drinking.
Yeah.
But when it's like this adrenaline thing, or because now they're talking about having rehabs that involve crypto addiction.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if I buy into all of that. And it's the same with like, there was this case, and I don't know if I'm going to get this right, but it was crazy to me. There was a guy, he was in the military, I think, and he had this really exciting lifestyle. He was like frontline, basically was constantly out like doing these missions. And when he got out of the military, he couldn't replace that adrenaline rush. Yeah. So he tried everything. He tried drugs, he tried drinking, he tried all this stuff, and nothing would replace it. And then he started doing armed robberies. And that defense, when he got caught, that was what he said. He's like, that was the only thing. He's like, I didn't care about the money. I wasn't trying to hurt people. I was honestly just trying to get that high going. And I was like, I don't know if I buy that at that point. Like, that is a crazy defense. And I think it worked.
Yeah.
So does that really check out as far as addiction goes?
It does. I mean,
That's crazy.
It's so like, I guess we should start with like the way that drugs influence your body. So like different drugs do different things, right?
Sure.
Like you've got like your psychoactives, and that's like weed, mushrooms, acid. Like those work by changing connections in your brain. And so they're not really like, they're not as chemically addictive because it's a little different every time. where like your body doesn't associate it with like, oh my God, I have to have this to stay alive. It's just kind of like, just kind of treats it as like, oh, that was a weird experience we just had. Like, time to keep going, living life. Yeah. Well, it's like, if it happens again, like, sure, it's fun, but like, there's nothing in it that's like the chemical itself or your body itself saying like, okay, we need to have this
like
to
a
survive.
heroin type of thing, right? Like where it's like I'm replacing a chemical that's depleted in your body or whatever.
So the way that addiction works with like alcohol and like heroin is that those two, and this goes with like pills and the same with cocaine and like essentially what they do is they just like open the floodgates for your body to release dopamine and serotonin, and say that it's essentially telling your body like when you start drinking, it's telling your body like, okay, here we go, like we're gonna have a fun time, we're gonna feel good, your muscles are gonna relax, you're gonna feel more confident, like all this other right, exactly. And so when you wake up the next morning and you're hungover, your body's like, oh wow, that really sucks. And you might feel like shit, so you don't want to drink right away. That takes like a long time to get up to, of the like, I'm gonna wake up and drink alcohol. But when you put yourself in that situation again where you're at the bar, your body and what the alcohol does is in your system when it's in there is it essentially tells your body like, hey, you're not going to get that dopamine rush unless you like do more of this. Like unless you drink more, you're going to have a worse time. And so like that's kind of where it starts to go. So it's
like, look around, think about your life. Do you want to be sober while you're doing that?
Yeah. And you feel like if it's 2 nights in a row, you feel physically worse. And you know, like, that'll make you... well, if I have another drink, this will be better.
Yeah.
And that's why it is so like associative to your environment is like, you look around at the bar and you're like, this is the bar where I drink and I have a good time, and I'm not having as good of a time, so I should be having a good time.
Right.
So that means I need to drink. But it's really just like all the drugs do is just release these chemicals our bodies already have.
Yeah.
And our bodies have them to release for things that are good for our body, right? Like when you eat food when you're hungry, you release a lot of serotonin and dopamine, which is why like when you're starving, food tastes so fucking good because your body's like really trying to encourage you not to be that hungry again. And so it like does that dump. So with this dude like trying to get that adrenaline back, like if his body is saying like, hey man, we need this to survive, like where is it, we don't have it like, and
I guess that's what he had been doing was like armed something or another. I mean, he was in the military. It wasn't armed robberies, but it was like combat.
Right. So he's like, his body's telling him like, hey man, we got to get back to combat. What are you doing? And he's like, he can't find a replacement until he starts robbing banks. And that's the only way his body can like, quote unquote, return to normal because it was at that heightened state for so long.
Yeah. I mean, it
anyway,
still
does
like
that make sense? That was a lot.
It does make sense. It still sounds like a crazy defense to say, because like a rational person would still be like, well, I guess I'm going to have to live without that adrenaline rush, as opposed to like, I'm going to go to any end of the earth to get this.
Well, you could say that about any drug, right? Like anyone who does a bunch of heroin and like is homeless on the street.
Yeah.
Like
that was
rationally.
Like Philip Seymour Hoffman. Remember, he died of heroin. There was surprising people because you think of like Kurt Cobain, and you're like, all right, we see it happening. But then there's guys that you're like, did anyone know that was going on in there?
Yeah. It doesn't like, it's a lot of it can happen because people, their brains don't regulate those chemicals properly.
Right.
Where like, if you struggle with depression and literally the only time you're happy is when you're on something, then like, you can come across as totally normal, like especially these actors, they're so good at like being happy around people, and then like they go home and you find out like, oh, he's miserable, like 22 and a half hours a day he's miserable, and then for an hour and a half he's like the happiest person ever, but that's when other people see him. Well,
that's the whole thing about, because I watched the special or it was like a documentary on Bill Wilson founding Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many people are part of that group, but it's not effective. It's like very ineffective. I
Yeah.
don't think it has the results that are any different than people who try to quit without using Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah.
What is so? Yeah. Do you remember like the stats or like why?
Yeah, I think it's just because it's all a matter of want, I think. I mean, you really have to want to quit. If someone's telling you to quit and get into this program, the program can't really do anything.
Yeah.
But if you want to and you go through those steps, because it's kind of like what you're saying, it's like you don't go to the places that remind you of drinking. You apologize to the people you have, like, you have to accept responsibility for things you've done. You have to do a lot of things where you'll look really stupid if you turn around and start drinking and doing the same things again.
Yeah.
But it's all kind of...
I know a comic that won't quit comedy because he says he told too many people that he was going to be a famous comic. So
he hates it.
So
and
he has no fun. He hasn't had a good set in 3 years, and he's like, I can't quit.
I can't satisfy
quit.
these people who thought I was going to quit.
He's like, I can't go back to these people, not a famous comic. I was like, buddy, they don't care, man.
Not at
like,
all.
You
They're
told
not even
them that like 8 years ago.
They probably don't even remember.
No, not at all.
And when you told them that, they were like, this guy's never going to make
also,
it.
if
no way that they thought.
No. But also, if they're like, oh, you only did it for 8 years, you fucking nerd. Like, oh, you stupid piece of shit. Like, anyway,
you
sorry.
Quit so hard.
I interrupted.
No,
but I think you're right on the want thing. Like,
that's the only way. But if you want to, I guess those steps help, like, marginally.
yeah.
But that's why it's always been surprising to me, too. Like, people that we work with, comics, that are very strong-willed, they're around alcohol all the time, they're not drinking, but they're going to meetings in the background.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, that's so funny, because I would just not, I mean, it sounds like an unpleasant way to spend an hour. So, like, it would make me want to drink more. I'd feel like this isn't helping. This is making me...
Yeah. You're like, well, I mean, I can't imagine hearing, like if I had to sit down for an hour and then hear a bunch of comics talk about how terrible comedy was, I don't think I'd want to do more comedy.
That's actually about how it ruined their lives, and which they should start those meetings, actually.
I mean, honestly, we need more people to quit.
Yeah,
there's like
100%.
Too many big comics told all the comics my age, like, no, just don't quit. You'll make it if you don't quit.
Every
I'm
day.
like, that's not true. You need to quit.
Yeah, a lot of you just aren't good. We gotta thin the herd.
Yeah, no, I like my understanding of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've never been to a meeting, and I've never I haven't done a ton of research into it aside from just like kind of knowing what it is. Like the overall structure is like, one, it holds you accountable on some level.
That's the
so
biggest,
like
I think.
you have a sponsor, like you're doing it for someone. It's not like
it's like
you have
Weight
someone
Watchers
to fall back
for losing
on.
weight. Yeah,
Yes.
you're in a community,
Right.
and you feel dumb if you don't take part in the way that you said you were going to take part in. I think
that's exactly it. And then I think the other part is it like provides a lot of structure to people. Like I think a lot of alcoholics just like their life feels out of control, and so to give them a structure is can be like very beneficial to like how they think about their life, and it's like replacing times that they would drink with something else, right? Like if I'm a comic and I go to a show, maybe it's easier to not drink during the show because I'm like, oh, I got to stay sober for my set, but the issue is like drinking afterwards. But if it's like, oh, I'm just gonna go to a meeting right afterwards, then suddenly you don't drink afterwards, and so it's kind of like filling that
have
time
a group that you're around. Well, that's probably the other part. It's like if you've told your family and friends a bunch of times you're going to quit drinking and you keep relapsing, you have no merit with them. But if you tell this group and then you relapse, you can show up again because everyone understands it, and they're like, all right, day one, let's go again. Like, you can do this.
That's a big but like support. Like a lot of families don't support.
Well, because people can only take so many like betrayals when it's a family, I think. But if it's a group of people that are all going through the same thing, it's got to be very different. But the want thing, it's like, and also a lot of the comics that I've worked with, namely Artie Lang, who've had addiction problems, obviously.
Sure.
His addiction problems were more, he'd go out, he'd be like the life of the party. Everyone wants to talk to him. He's telling stories. He's so funny.
Yeah.
And then he would disappear to go do drugs by himself. Like, it didn't even make sense. I was like, you would rather be in a car just like listening to the radio guy. That sounds like a nightmare. Most people want to be around their friends. So that's the other part. I just don't understand so many levels of addiction.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to Artie Lang specifically because I didn't know him, but like that it could be, and I'm again just totally speculating, that he was just exhausted of performing for people.
Yeah.
Like if he felt like he needed to be on with these people all the time, and then suddenly he's just like, all right, I'm fucking drained. I'm going to go like over here and like do the thing that makes me feel better.
And the demons, all the things, the thoughts that he wants to suppress and all. He's like, all right, everything could just go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I forget about that. That the people who are the life of the party, they're performative half the time. It's like they don't want to be, maybe, but they just are.
Right. That's where you get like the John Belushi and like those old like those SNL dudes that like all got hooked on coke in the 80s on SNL and then just really burned out over the next like 6 or 7 years.
But those guys did seem like they were doing it in a show, like that was fun for them. Like they were going out and partying hard and having the time of their lives.
Well, I'm sure it was fun at night.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that's too much fun in the morning.
Next day.
It's like I don't party nearly that hard and I'm like dying in the morning.
Yeah.
So
that's why I don't I don't drink much, mostly because I get hungover so much or so badly. But I don't drink much, and I still would never be able to never drink again. Like, that is a really hard thing to do. I can't imagine going to a wedding or something and not being able to have a drink. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really struggle with addiction, so I don't. I'm kind of the same way. Is like, I have little... I guess to an extent we do the same thing, right? Like exactly what you just said is like, oh, at a wedding, that's where you drink.
Yeah.
The issue becomes where like you get to the point where everywhere is where you have a drink. Yeah. Where like, I guess people with non-addictive personalities like don't, like if I'm at a funeral, like there's no part of me that's like, this would be better if I were drunk. Even though it probably would be.
Mostly that's the place where everything would be for sure.
So like, why don't I think like, oh yeah, I should have a drink. It's like, well, I don't know. This doesn't feel like the right time. I don't feel like I need one. Like, you know, like that. But like, I guess if you wake up and you're miserable and you're like, oh, well, I'm in the bathroom in the morning, so I guess I need a drink. Like, that would be so difficult.
Yeah.
Just everywhere you look, you're like reminded of booze.
I just can't even imagine like going through a day, because if I day drink too, I'm exhausted. Like to drink every day and be able to function, that's the other part, I guess, is like the functioning alcoholics who still get a bad rap for like, you have to quit your drinking, I guess, for a health reason. If I was that guy, I'd be like, no, like I'm fine.
Well, that's why I don't quit.
Exactly. I feel like until I'm behind a dumpster like pissing my life away, I'm probably gonna keep doing this.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, did you read or did you see one of the new studies that came out about alcohol and like how different people metabolize it?
No.
So like this just came out and they're starting to do more studies on this stuff, but I'll see if I can find the study and link it in the description on this podcast, but they're realizing that different people metabolize alcohol differently. So like it gets everybody drunk. That's because you're essentially poisoning your body and your brain like slows down and it feels good, right? But like, have you ever noticed with some people, they have found out that like 33% of people do not get energized from drinking. Like drinking actually makes them feel more tired.
Sure.
Where like it's something like 65% of people get more energy from alcohol. So like if you think about it in your own experience, like everybody knows the one person that's like that could stay up until 6 or 7 in the morning, like and they'll just like go. They could just go all night. that person, like, alcohol is keeping them going. As soon as they stop drinking, they pass out.
Okay.
But like they're just having so many drinks and it keeps going, where like other people that are like, yeah, I have 1-2 drinks and then I'll head out. I don't know, I'm tired.
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm the first type. If I'm constantly drinking, I can stay up all night. Yeah. All night. It's gotten me in trouble a few times. Not too many times.
So funny.
But like there's
like
been a few.
Like that's
yes.
Yeah, that's nuts. I didn't know that it really had that effect on people. I figure they're already that, like Gino Bisconti, they're already that personality,
right?
And then it just exacerbates it, which I guess kind of is the case. Yeah, I think it has to metabolize differently though, because there's also people who, like you said, they're super fun and they're drunk, and then other people after a few drinks are like,
yes,
and you're like, you can't have a conversation with them anymore, and you're like, what happens to you? It's like a fourth drink.
Those people are just tiny. They're like very small people, and yeah, they look at me. They're like, I'm so jealous you can have more than 1.5 drinks without getting hammered. I was like, I'm jealous that I don't have to spend $400 a night to get hammered. You're
exactly.
Like,
you're like, I have to. Yeah, it's my paycheck going out there.
God damn it.
What do you drink? Do you drink hard liquor or?
I'll drink anything.
Anything?
Yeah. It depends on my mood.
What is your nationality?
I'm like aggressively American. Like I had ancestors
like
come over on the Mayflower.
That's
yeah, literally
amazing.
On the Mayflower.
Wait, are you? What's
like
the equivalent
the 1500s?
Of Daughters of the Revolution.
Yeah, to my
there must be a male equivalent to that kind of thing.
Oh, I don't know. Somewhere down my family line, it's like 9th time uncle way back is Paul Revere. And
my God.
And then allegedly my grandmother says my grandma did like all the like ancestry stuff. She was in her 80s when she did it, so like we're leaving room for like, but we've also taken those ancestry.com things, so they're
and
like,
it's like proven.
It doesn't prove it, but it does like say like she was at least in the ballpark. But she said that my like 10th generation great grandmother was the first baby born on the Mayflower.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
wow.
Aggressively American.
Yeah,
and
that's
then,
like the most. You're the most American person I've ever met. I think
I've tried to do bits about it. It's like, why isn't my family rich?
Yeah,
like we're in the richest country in the history of the world.
Owned everything, everyone. At that point, you should have
exactly.
owned.
Well, we were in the north, so we weren't owning people, but like
you should have at least owned land.
We should have as like
animals. Like you should have had a big farm.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, it's like every time someone was like, oh, I have this idea, I'm gonna make a bunch of money. We were like, no, not for me. And it's like, why am I like, I'm doing okay, but like
right up until Google, you guys were like, no, that's a silly investment.
And there's so many stories like that. My uncle decided, or like convinced my aunt to sell a bunch of Apple stock right before the iPhone came out, and she would have had like, I think it was something like $20 million worth of Apple stock if she kept it.
Yeah.
If she kept it. And so it's like, the numbers are probably off, and I'm gonna get a text from my dad that's like, it wasn't that much money, but like
it was actually $1 billion.
There's
like,
so
no!
many. I know. Yeah, she got offered the VP job at Apple. No, there's been
She's
so
like,
many.
I'll go with
There's been
Jeeves.
so many fucking things like that. Like I should have hit it big on crypto, and I just fucking missed, and like all these
that
other
one,
things.
I think we all have that story because we all have a friend that was like obsessed. That was like in 2011, or that's like, you gotta buy crypto. And
2015, we were like setting up our laptops and like mining it. Like the old-fashioned way, and then
so you were already into it.
I
like,
was
you were
into
one of the
it.
people
Yeah,
touting it.
I have a buddy that was like, "All right, I'm gonna buy a Bitcoin when it hits $200," and it only got down to 201, so we never bought one.
And
then we were like, "You stupid idiot! That $1 cost you 65 grand."
Except not really, because if he bought it for 200 and it went to 400, he'd be like, "That's it, I'm selling."
That
most
is
likely.
possible. Yeah,
That's how I feel about if I got into it that early. Because I had, a friend who did. He was the first guy to really tell me about podcasting. He was like in on the ground floor podcasting. He had one of the first like popular podcasts, and then he started a crypto podcast, and this was like 2011 or something. And I'm like, how? I've lost track of him, and I think he did well, but I think he sold out at like, because he was one of those guys. He was in, I think it was like $70 or something when he was in it, and I'm sure when it went to like, if he stayed until 10,000, I'd be surprised, because that's a huge return.
Return.
Yeah. So
the people that got that return are like a few people that really believed in it,
or they forgot they had it.
forgot they had it.
That's
Yeah,
the best.
they're like, oh wait, they found a hard drive. They're like, I got 100 Bitcoin here. What the fuck? Like, we're rich.
Yeah.
But to like, you brought up the crypto addiction before, like that essentially to me, like I put that in the same bucket as gambling addiction.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's the rush. It's the dopamine of like.
But can you equivocate, is that the right word? Can you equivocate with that with a chemical addiction? Can you say like that's just as gripping, or is that just people being weak-minded, or am I being really like insensitive in that sense?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if insensitive is the right word, because it is different.
Because you look
it's
at
not
that
the
stuff,
same.
even how people look at food addiction. When people who don't have a food addiction is like, just don't eat, like stop. And people are like, yeah, you can't say that to people. It's going to be, and you can't go cold turkey and that kind of thing. You have to eat food, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm like, when it's a chemical thing, I have way more. Also, because the people in my family have experienced chemical. It's like we have alcoholics, people who smoked, drug addicts. I don't know that I've known anyone who's had an addiction that's just like a sex addiction or or I had a boyfriend who said he had a sex addiction. that checks it. Or doesn't check out. I still don't believe it. I'm like, you're just an asshole.
Yeah.
But same with the gambling thing. It's like, no, you're taking your own free will. It's not a chemical thing telling you to do that.
Yeah.
Except that it is if it's adrenaline, I guess.
Yeah. Well, okay. So it's an internal chemical, right? Like it's not an external chemical. I think like it's all about just like how much your body associates the chemical with the stimuli, right? So like gambling's very tough because it's super easy and the highs are so high.
And
like,
when you're below, you always think when you're down, you always think I at least have to get back to even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think there is some level of like food addiction is very tricky. I think it is more difficult to get a food addiction than like a heroin addiction, for instance.
But
like
do you
the chemical can make it much easier to be addicted to it, depending on how much your body associates that chemical and how miserable the hangover is, right? Like, yeah. I honestly think there are just people that, like, with food addiction, where, like, when they're hungry, they are, like, just in physical pain. Like, their whole body is just, like, it feels like they're going through withdrawals when they're not eating.
So that was going to be my question, because how do you differentiate someone who just likes food and wants to eat a lot with a food addict? So that would be the differentiation. If they're like if you're getting if you're getting like adrenaline in your body that says like we are dying because we're not eating. Yeah. Like that would be really hard to not eat. Yeah.
And like the tricky...
Except you could be like, but when I look in a mirror, we're nowhere near dying. Like, like not psychologically,
but
I guess.
You said it. You have to feel like you want to change.
Yeah.
It's like with the alcoholism, like you logically you can say like, oh, I'm going to lose weight, or like think of every single person who makes a New Year's resolution is like, I'm going to lose weight this year. But like, until you actually feel like, no, I have to lose weight because it is
a health
preventing
problem.
me from doing something that I really would like to do.
Yeah.
You're never going to do it. It's so hard for people to change.
Yeah.
But to your point, like a chemical addiction makes that even harder. Like with alcoholism.
Because then you go through real withdrawals.
I think the withdrawals are roughly the same. It's just an added layer of alcohol also telling you. So your body says it's going to die, and then alcohol is also reinforcing your body saying that it's going to die.
Yeah. So now you have a
like
chemical
heroin.
thing telling you as well as a physical thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So not to say that they're any worse or better, because if you like, I haven't met anyone with a food addiction per se. Like in my family, my family struggles with its weight. Like there's a lot of people in my family that struggle with their weight. And it's like a lot of times that at least from what I've gathered is like, it's kind of a like the busier they are, the more they're like, okay, well, let me get this little snack because like, oh, work really sucked today, and then I have to do this, and this, so I'm just gonna like scarf down some shitty food here, and then
it's like a temporary.
Yeah, well, you kind of eat thinking I'm not gonna have food later.
Okay.
But then like you almost always get food later.
Yeah.
And then you kind of eat double because you like ate before, which honestly, like I think part of the reason people are skinny in New York is that food is everywhere.
Yeah.
I never feel like, holy shit, I have to eat right now.
Yeah.
Because I know that wherever I go, I'm going to be able to get food if I get hungry.
Plus, you're walking everywhere.
True.
Which is different. It is weird that you want to eat
But you're drinking.
more.
I think the drinking and the walking counteract
That's
each other.
probably true. Yeah, I would think that's
what
true.
I did for like 5 years. Is like I was doing a lot of walking, but I was doing a lot of drinking.
Yeah,
so.
that counteracts. Yeah, I think too though that like it's weird that the more, well, I guess maybe it's not weird, but the more active you are, the less you do want to like overeat. It doesn't affect drinking though, but like if you're very sedentary, I can't find words anymore.
Yeah.
Sedentary.
Yeah.
If you're sedentary, you like want to eat junk food, which is weird. You would think
I
the
think
opposite.
that's boredom. I think that's people
probably
being
true.
bored,
Okay.
which like, yeah, that definitely happens too. But I don't think that's a food addiction. I think just generally being overweight. I think food addiction are like those people in my 600-pound life where it's like if you see them like in the show, they'll show them not eating for like 3 hours and they are like
beside themselves,
rolling on the floor like in physical, like they're going through withdrawals, like their body is telling them that they're currently dying without food. And it's so hard to like, if everything your body's telling you you're dying, like you can logically be like I'm not, but it feels like you are. So it's like the same with like paranoia or anxiety sort of.
Okay.
It's like
you can rationally be like, this isn't.
Yeah, well, like an anxiety attack, like people get anxiety attacks just like in a grocery store. There's nothing wrong with the grocery store. They're just like their body just can't. It's like something's just not firing
you're in, like,
right.
A C-town or something.
Sure.
Like, I'm gonna get shanked.
Yeah. Well, okay. We're not talking about Baltimore in the mid 2000s during The Wire, but like, yeah.
I have not watched. I'm the only person alive who hasn't watched that.
I just finished it, so it is good.
Yeah. See, why is that stuff so fun to watch though? Like the My 600-Pound Life is so fun to watch, and like whatever that old. What was the show they used to have? Oh, the ones where they had interventions.
Yes,
those were so
intervention.
Good to watch because the people would be running away. Like they'd literally be running away from the intervention, and people would have to go chase them down.
Yeah,
they're so good to watch.
Yeah, I mean, they're like fascinating on some level because you're sitting there going like, how did they get to that point?
That's it. I think like how you're like, I might have problems, but I'm not that. Like, how did they get that?
Yeah, I think I'm lucky that I don't have an addictive personality. Like I truly don't think I have one. I'm pretty good at like disassociating stuff, or like even at the Three Monkeys where we do shows all the time and you get paid in a drink ticket and like all this other stuff. Like it took a while, but now I'm very comfortable not taking the drink ticket. Yeah. Because I'm like, I can't do this every time. And
well, that's impressive because like I said, it's two-tone because one, it's fun to drink, and two, that's your pay at a lot of comedy shows. So now you're like, oh, now I'm doing this for less pay or for free and I'm not having as much fun. So
yeah, but not everything has to be fun, you know? Like I don't know, I'm trying to keep balance, you know, and like maybe this goes to like your Artie Lang impression is like if it's like the vacation hangover where like if you go on like a week-long vacation down to the Caribbean and you come back and the next week and a half you're depressed because you had such a good time over there that now you're gonna like your body balances out and it's like, nope, now we gotta have a bad time over here because you were too high for too long. And so like with heroin, like it kind of works the same way. It's like you felt really good and now you're gonna feel real shitty.
That's the thing about bipolar, I guess, too. It's like people who don't want to take meds, I get it because the highs must be so good.
Oh my God,
then the lows have got to be like
terrible,
suicidal.
Right. Yeah, it's some people just love the roller coaster. Yeah. And like you see that in relationships too. Like I think people can get addicted to like love bombing. And like you ever see like an abusive relationship where like the woman is like she's the victim in this scenario and the guy is like for like 2 months he's the best significant other ever. And he's just like buying her gifts and taking her out and telling her how much he loves her and like essentially love bombing her, like every moment saying like I love you, I love you, I love you. And then for like a month he's like incredibly abusive and like physical and all this other stuff, and then like he turns around and he's like immediately the best boyfriend ever. And like that roller coaster is like, people can feel like they get trapped on it because they're like, the chemicals at the top are so good, and then the lack of chemicals at the bottom are so bad.
Well, and then going all the way back up must feel amazing again, to be like, I'm saved again. Wait, so for that type of thing, when guys love bomb, do they get wrapped up in it themselves to the point where they really think they're that in love and then a switch goes off? Or are they psychologically messing with someone where they're like, I know that I'm going to get this girl so into me and then I can mess with her and then get her back? Which do you think is happening?
I think it depends on the guy. I think the second one, like if they're doing it and they're messing with them, then like that's a true sociopath, where like if they're also kind of riding the highs and they can't control, because odds are they're probably bipolar.
And so they're having the same experience.
They're like,
having
I'm
the
so
same
experience.
What the
yes,
I'm so
exactly.
Okay.
And they're like, but you know, they don't know what they're doing necessarily.
Even
so, like,
if it's gone on, like, because I know people who've had that sort of behavior over years. So you'd think at some point they'd recognize within themselves or others even, like, this is a crazy way to behave. This isn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess if you're just that way, you're just that way.
It's, I've said it a couple times. It's like sometimes people's brains just aren't firing the right way. And like you said with bipolar, like if someone's bipolar and they're, if they can't control those swings in themselves, like it would make sense that, like, I'd love to see like some studies on this actually, where like if someone's in an abusive relationship and then they start and they're bipolar and they start taking meds, like does that,
or do they wake up? Yeah.
I don't know if wake up's the right phrase, but like do they start treating their partner normally?
Oh, you mean the abuser? If
the abuser
goes
yeah.
I think the opposite. Yeah. I wonder too. This is my question too about studying psychology. Do you think some study it like because they're psychopaths and they want to learn people's psyches and able to be able to mess with them?
Most people that are into psychology, I mean, I'm sure there's a few that are like, oh, I'm gonna like figure out how to mess with people, but honestly, like true psychopaths figure out how to do that at a pretty young age.
Oh, they're not needing
it's not hard to mess with people. Like the thing that stops people from messing with other people generally is like a baseline of empathy, where like
if you lack that, you
all
can do
of
anything.
us know how to fucking ruin someone's life if we really wanted to.
Yeah.
Or like ruin everyone's life. Just go through here, be like a complete asshole the entire time, super manipulative. Like everyone knows how to do that. And that's kind of natural. Most people that study psychology, I feel like, did it to try to understand themselves better.
Okay.
Where it's like, oh, this is how, this is why I acted this way, or this is why I do that. And so like, sort of a fascination with just like how people act in general, but then also like, oh, that's why I did this, or that's why my family did that, or like people who go in to be therapists, I think very often are like they like to psychoanalyze themselves, and so they're like, well, I figured this stuff out, so now I want to help other people figure this stuff out about themselves. So it's generally genuine, but it's just like anything else. You can get psychopaths doing whatever.
There's gonna be bad apples, as they say. That's good to know, though, that most people are good, because I do the cynical. I'm like, most people are trying to mess with you.
I mean, what's that say about how you grew up? I was like, well, I did want to get into that. We have like 10 minutes left, but like, if you don't want to talk about your family and like their stuff with addiction, then we definitely don't have to. But
no, we can go into it. It's nothing. That's what I mean. No, it's nothing like that's formed any part of my life in any big way. I don't think. It's just my mom was always an alcoholic and
like functioning,
very functioning. Okay. Like every night she would start drinking probably at 6, and you'd see her get antsy if she didn't start drinking. And then throughout the night she would drink, and there weren't a lot of ways to tell that she was drunk that I knew of. You can tell it's like a little slower, a little more slurred.
Sure.
type of thing. But she was a teacher. She'd wake up at 7 a.m.
Oh,
the next day and go to school. And like
you try dealing with kids all day and not coming and drinking.
I'd take a flask with me to the room. I'd be like, I'm gonna...
My dad's a teacher, and like he's definitely not a drunk, but he does like making cocktails every once in a while.
Yeah,
like,
well, I would honestly, my mom would tell me stories, or I occasionally met some of her students. And one time she worked in like kind of an inner city school for a while, and there were these stories. She, some kid pulled the fire alarm and everyone had to file out of class, and she took the kids out and all that. And then they came back in and someone had stolen her purse.
No shit.
And I was like, I'm going to come in and murder every one of your students. Like, she would give them, candy on Halloween or whatever, put like, Hershey's Kisses on their desk, turn around to the chalkboard, and like candy would just be pelted at her. I was like, what? I can't. Yeah, so I don't blame her, but that was always a debate in the family. She also smoked cigarettes, which I hated, and that was a health thing.
That's a real chemical addiction too. Like nicotine is
worse,
very
I think,
sticky.
than anything, because most alcoholics who recover are still smoking.
Yeah.
Which these days is interesting. Not many people smoke except for former alcoholics.
Well, it's the cigarettes, yes, but like vaping with my generation is fucking huge, and I think it goes to like, It's mostly like tech bros. It's mostly dudes that are working like 10 to 12 hours a day.
And is that just like the oral fixation, or is that the actual?
So that doesn't help, but it's also the nicotine on top of it is like giving them a little boost. So they're like, all right, if I have to, nobody's brain was wired to sit somewhere for 10 hours straight and just think about numbers. Like, okay, I shouldn't say nobody. There are those like crazy weirdos
or
that
like autistic people.
Yeah, sure.
Brain's just a computer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like Albert Einstein or whatever. Like, yeah, you could sit there and like, but like most people are not wired that way. And so like your brain starts to not give you dopamine when you keep doing things that it doesn't want to do. So it's like you could sit there and stare for like 3 hours and your brain's like, all right, well, we're doing something. This is good. But like hour 5, it's like, hey, man, how long are we doing this? And then like hour 7, it's like, we do not want to be doing this. And so you get to the point where it's like you need a chemical for your brain to release dopamine. And so you're sitting at the computer and you're just ripping joules. And it's like that's your way of like keeping your brain happy while you're doing something that it doesn't want to be doing.
Well, and I know people did chain smoke back in the day, but the vaping, I've never seen anyone. People vape literally constantly.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, and it's such a weird thing because cigarettes had this cachet, I feel like, where people thought they were being glamorous. Vaping, people are like hiding it half the time and like doing it. Yeah, so that is a pure little rush for them.
It's just a little hit. And the more you like do, if you're doing that every 10 minutes or so and you go like 45 minutes without one, you're just like you're like, I gotta go because your body wants to like balance it out.
And they haven't figured out what that does to your body yet. Like I've heard of popcorn lung, but I don't know what else is going on.
I think that's pretty rare, but I think it's just like a chemical addiction. It's like caffeine. Like, I think of all the, if anything, like I would admit to having a mild caffeine addiction where like if I don't have coffee in the morning or like and like a little bit of caffeine in the afternoon, then like I start to get a headache at like 4 or 5 o'clock. But it kind of depends on what I'm doing. Yeah. Like if I am here and I'm working, then like I'm definitely getting another coffee. But like if I go on vacation, I don't feel nearly as much of a need to like go get an afternoon coffee. I still like to have it, but like
that's where I always question the addiction thing. That's where I'm like, are you just doing something that you want to do and calling it it's like when people say they're allergic to something when they just don't like something. I'm like, all right, calm down.
No, it truly is like your brain is getting dopamine from other things. Yeah. So if I'm like spending all day snorkeling in the Caribbean,
you don't need it.
Then like my brain's fucking happy. Like I don't need the caffeine to tell my brain to dump dopamine. It's doing it by itself. But if I'm sitting in my apartment alone and like I've stared at an Excel sheet for 6 hours, I need something to like tell my brain to make me happy. Otherwise I'm just gonna like burn out and you're like you get the computer glaze over in your eyes where it's just like you can't even fucking see straight. It's not fun.
Well, and that's the other thing too that I've never had a full understanding of. Like with my mom, she did not want to quit. She was basically like, I don't want to quit. I don't want to go through withdrawals. I'm fine.
Sure.
So what can you do?
Yeah.
But The other thing I don't totally understand, and this was part of like the documentary on AA, was when they were realizing you could not be just a part-time drinker if you had this addiction.
Yeah.
Which is the other thing I really don't get. So no one can do that? You don't think there's some people that can go half back and be like, I can just have a glass of wine occasionally?
Some people can, and there's this comic. I don't think you know him, but last week I went to his relapse party. Which
God, that's hilarious.
Which is one of the funniest things I've ever heard of in my life.
Actually.
But
and that would be a hell of a party.
Like, my buddy was like, "Hey, this dude's having a relapse party. You want to go?" And I was like, 100%, yes.
Yeah.
And then I had my one of my other friends be like, "I think that's bad karma to go to like a relapse party."
Well,
I was
how
like,
bad was his addiction? Was he doing?
So we didn't know, but I asked him when we were there, and he was like, "Well, look, what happened is that I had like a really bad breakup with a long-term girlfriend, and then he's a comic, so he's always around booze, and he just like really got into booze, and he was kind of like mitigating the feeling of this breakup with booze."
Sure.
And so he decided like he needed to quit drinking because like he was going down the path a little bit too far. Well, I guess it's been 3 years since he quit drinking, and he was like, I'm in a good place. I'm not worried about that breakup. And so now I feel like I can go back and have a couple of drinks because he's not drinking to run from something.
Right.
And I was like, well, good for you. Like, I'm happy that you're in a place where you feel like you can drink.
Yeah.
So it is possible.
He's like, and bring on the heroin. And
Yeah,
like,
yeah. No, I was half expecting to roll into that party and have him being like on the floor
yeah,
again.
like honest to.
But like, so he could do that, but
But people say it's a slippery slope. They'll say it's going to go right back into the full-fledged addiction if you're really an addict. But if he wasn't an addict and he was just doing something temporarily.
I think it's one of those, like, and AA's definitely got its flaws, but I think it's one of those that if you're to the point where you feel like you need to go to AA, or the people around you feel like you need to go to AA, then you are too far gone to ever like be a casual again.
Drinker
like
kind of
I'm
thing.
sure there are probably people all the time that are like, oh yeah, I just didn't drink for the last like 10-11 months, whatever.
Yeah.
Like didn't have anything going on, didn't really want to do it, like whatever, and then they get back into it casually. It's like but like
I also know alcoholics though that are definitely alcoholics that are like, no, I spent 2 weeks not drinking, I'm fine, I can do it anytime I want. And I'm like, sure, that's a good.
Well, there's different types of alcoholics, right? Like you've got your binge drinkers, which like they can go like 6 days at a time, but on that 7th day, if they're gonna have like 45 drinks, then like that's just as bad as having like 4 cocktails a night every night. You know,
absolutely.
So it's like that could be a different form of alcoholism for sure. You don't see that with heroin though. It's like,
that seems to be.
Went 2 weeks with no heroin. I'm really doing it now. Those people die actually.
Oh God. Well, yeah, that is what happens exactly. The people who go, the people who quit a real hard drug like that and then relapse, they go because I think your body, you take what you think is the normal amount, and your body's like, not anymore.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. Even with drinking, that was the Amy Winehouse thing. I think. But did you see? I just saw this. I love musicals. I love Neil Patrick Harris.
Sure.
In particular, I know he's a regular actor, and he more or less. But he apparently hosted a party where they had like a cake that was the corpse of Amy Winehouse. I was like, "What?" It was something that was online, and I had to look it up.
How did he think of
real. I have no idea.
Wow.
And I also think, I mean, it was clearly meant to be a joke and not something. But people were like, "I can never watch his stuff again because of that." And I was just like, "He has a side I didn't know he had."
Yeah. Those like I thought you were gonna say Neil Patrick Harris was an alcoholic. I was like, I bet his life is
I wouldn't be surprised.
Pretty stressful. There's the people that like stress drink at the same way they stress
he was
eat.
Doogie Howser.
And like
he's been famous since he's like 12. Yeah,
oh
that's
my God.
That's a path most kid stars take is with drugs and alcohol.
Listening to like the kid. Did you watch The Sopranos?
No.
Oh my God! You are the only one. I was like, I
really have. The sad thing is, I actually tried because everyone says it's so good. I watched like the first 3 episodes, and I was like, I'm not in love with this. Everyone loves it. I have to try again.
Yeah, it's one of those slow
builds, and then you get really
You get like into the story and the characters
because it's people's number one. Like it's their number one show.
It's up there for me.
Yeah,
it's definitely top 5.
I have to try again.
But like one of the actors that played the son was like into like drugs as a kid, like hard drugs, and he was saying like
for in his real life.
yeah,
or on the show?
in his real life, and it just kind of stemmed from like he had way too much money and a ton of free time because like the school that the actors would be in would just be like these little nothing, like, all right, we'll do like your 40 minutes of classwork or whatever, and then once you're done with your shoot, you're free, and then all your friends are like, and then you're famous, so everyone wants to hang out with you, and then you get invited to all these parties, and you're just like a kid, so you have no idea what anything is, or like there's no way he could have the perspective of like, oh no, heroin's gonna be a big fucking problem for me.
I
don't remember if he was on heroin. It was like, it might have been pills that he was into, but those child actors, that's so tough because they have so much money and so much freedom and fame at like the right age. They're so stressed.
Oh yeah.
Like I do not envy them at all.
Yeah. No, those are like, that's like the Drew Barrymores from back in the day too, like Corey Haim, like But it's funny, I just listened to an interview with Kirk Cameron, who was a big kid star, and he did not get into drugs. He found religion. And he goes, that is almost worse. He's like on a like social level, that makes you a bigger pariah if you come out as
it's the same addiction. Like he's getting, instead of alcohol telling his brain to do this chemical dump, it's like religion. Like he's going into the church, and it's like,
and he's proselytized. He's like doing this, I'm better than everyone, and everyone needs to listen to me kind of thing, I guess.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, we are at an hour.
Perfect.
This was super fun. I could talk about psychology and addiction all day. So when you were like, let's talk about that, I was like, yes.
Yeah, that was probably good. I was going to come in heavy and be like, abortion. Let's do it.
I mean, if you want to do abortion, I'm happy to do that, because that is, we've done other episodes that are like heavy. Like
really?
I interviewed one of my old this is probably my favorite episode, but one of my best friends from high school, about what it was like for him to come out as gay, because he didn't come out until later in life, and like done other stuff like that. So if you wanna have like a serious one on abortion, then like let me know, we'll get you back on.
Trans, let's do it. We'll do a serious one at some point. I like that stuff, because no one has like nuanced conversations about, everyone gets angry, so it could be fun to try.
Sure. Yeah, anytime. Where can people find you?
I'm mostly just social media at Alli Breen. I do the Bob and Tom show every Wednesday, so you can listen there, and at live comedy shows that I post usually on Instagram about. Cool. In New York mostly, but all around. Yeah, we're on a bunch of Three Monkeys shows together all the time. So Midtown Manhattan. Oh my God, it's something. It's something. Follow me at Corey T Comedy on all social media, and come see Ope, a comedy show, every single week at Ferns in the East Village. If you're in New York City, Allie, we need to still get you on that show. Yeah, that sounds great. We'll get that done soon. And then, like, follow, subscribe, share the podcast, all that fun stuff. And let's do it again sometime. Perfect. Sounds good.